B kind of in a bad spot there, but we can scroll to that if we need to. There's A. Asking for the time interval when the particle is moving to the left. So they found the velocity function by differentiating position. Finding out where position was negative, or excuse me, where velocity was negative, and therefore it's where particles moving left. Any questions there on A? Yeah, Audrey, go ahead.
I'm thinking on B. So since kind of like with A, you kind of use the answer from A to answer B, do you have to rewrite it? Like, it's like mine's all over the place.
Well, wait a minute. What part of A did you use in B?
Because it's asking when they're going the same
for
direction.
Velocity.
Yeah.
Oh, you can totally do that.
You could just leave them like separate and just like write it out the same because it's the work's shown on the paper.
Yeah. So if you figured out like the velocity of P in part A, you can use whatever conclusions or derivatives or whatever it is you found in A. You can just directly import that into B.
Okay.
You don't have to like reprove it or anything like that. Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely look at these questions as holistically as we can. And so yeah, if you got something in A and you just import it into B, no big deal. And furthermore, if you do that and you missed something on A and you imported the wrong answer into B, you very well could get full credit for B. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So definitely you should do what you're talking about. Sir.
So for B,
Yeah.
I used sign on for A as well, like the same.
Sure. Yeah, a little sign chart thing.
Yeah, sign chart.
That's fine. Yeah.
But I did analysis where I talked about P of 2, or
You looked at some specific time values?
yeah, or like 0 and 2.
Yeah.
To determine, do I need, like on the notes it says if only one interval with like analysis, does that mean these kind of
Okay, so what that's getting at is that there should be two separate intervals, right? So the intervals where the particles are moving in the same direction would be from 1 to 3 and 5 to 8, right? So what that's talking about, like what that little note is talking about, is if they only had one of the two intervals, right? And they had good analysis with one of those two intervals, they would get 1 out of 2. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Right, so if you have both intervals and you have supplied the reasoning of, hey, you know, both velocities are positive or both velocities are negative, you're good. Does it make sense? But what they're basically saying is that you can get half credit if you had just one of the two intervals, but your reasoning was good.
But if there's no analysis, even if you got the intervals right,
Yup. Yeah, if you didn't write anything about, hey, the velocities are the same sign, their velocities are both positive here, velocities are both negative there. If you didn't write anything about that down, there's like the spirit of all this is just simply that they're trying to figure out a way to measure your thinking. And all too often, I've seen this happen plenty of times, somebody will get a right answer and their thinking was like totally wrong. So they're trying to put an emphasis on what are you thinking about? Like what is your process to get to those answers? I was reading on here, yeah. So you definitely want to supply, like you always, like on FRQs, you always want to supply reasoning. You always want to supply reasons, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that because B, or like C says explain your reasoning and then B doesn't, I didn't really have to.
Oh, gotcha.
Because it sounded like they were
If you know, let me, let's see here. Remind me to show you all something when we're done with this. I think it might help clarify that for you.
Because I was wondering.
Yeah. Okay, so C and D. Okay, so C hopefully was a pretty familiar question there. You know, you had to find the acceleration, but then is the speed of Q increasing, decreasing, or neither? So we've done a lot of those, and hopefully you're able to remember. If not, this is another opportunity to remember. And then part D, find the position of Q the first time it changes directions. So anyways, there's some answers there. Like you can see right here, they've done their antiderivatives. They're still not done yet. We could have done this step right here. If you would have done something like 5 plus 1/3 of 3 cubed minus 4 times 3 squared plus 15 times 3, technically minus 0, right? Because all those would zero out when you plug in that 0. You could stop right there and call that good. And in fact, I would recommend that you did that instead of trying to, mentally go through and finish. Yeah.
If you did that and like stopped there, and you didn't put -0.
Oh yeah, you'd be totally fine. I just said technically you could put that there.
If you should show that you did the 0
So I don't think that'd be a big deal. The reason that I put that in there is the reason why I want you to consider it is we often will just say, oh yeah, if you plug in a 0, you just get a 0. But keep in mind that if you have like an exponential or a trig function in there, that's not the case, right? Because e to the 0 is not 0. And cosine of 0 is not 0.
Yeah.
And so it's easy just to blow that last part off, but at least think about it. At least say, is this 0 going to really cause the final result to be 0? A lot of times the answer will be yes. Sometimes no. So just be careful with that. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else? You guys look tentatively confident, that went okay, but you're waiting for the other shoe to fall or something. No? Yes? You good?
I
Like this one okay? Yeah.
I just forgot about speed because the velocity and acceleration have the sign.
Right. Yeah, if you start from that place, then yeah, you whip out a couple numbers, you should be good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's not leave any detail uncovered. All right, well then let me show you what I wanted to show Nick as far as, I was going to do this a different time, but I think this is just as good of a time. I would like you guys to check out this. So I know the writing's a little bit tiny. I'll zoom in on the important stuff. This is actually the instructions from last year's AP test for the FRQs. So instructions. Let's see here. Blah, blah, blah. The first paragraph. Cross out any errors you make. Manage your time carefully. You're permitted to use your calculator on part A. You must clearly indicate the setup of your question, namely the equation, function, or integral you're using. Like we've done that all year. Let's see here. The part that I'm looking at is right here. The first bullet point says, show all your work, even though a question may not explicitly remind you to do so. So that's kind of getting a little bit of what you're talking about there, Nick.
Yeah.
Clearly label any functions, graphs, tables, or other objects that you use. So don't have any floating expressions or unlabeled graphs, that kind of thing. Justifications require that you give mathematical reasons. You verify the needed conditions for all the theorems and such that you use. Your work will be scored on correctness and completeness of your methods as well as your answers. So answers without supporting work will usually not receive credit. The two bullet points later, unless otherwise specified, answers need not be simplified. 3 decimal place thing. And I think that's it. So Nick, I just want to bring that out. Just always assume that that's sort of like the underlying requirement of give a reason, show us why you got this, sort of thing. So, okay, any other follow-ups? If not, let's flip over to the other side. And on the other side, awaiting you, is a lovely graph question with lots of letters. So this will be interesting to see how this goes for you. I'm sure you can do fine, but pay attention to details. This is like the classic trap of if you consider every function to be f, number 6 is going to give you fits because there's lots of different functions. So please check it out. Here is A, B, and C. A, B, and C.
Yeah, we do. I love it.
A is a prime candidate for not simplifying. Sort of, I think B would be pretty minor. C is another candidate for not simplifying.
Wait, is A worth 2 points?
A is worth 2 points, yeah. So you had to do a product rule to get that, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you got to do a product rule, they'll typically give you 2 points.
So if I left it, like see the last line of A, I
Yeah.
left it in the -2 sign too high, that's okay?
Yeah, yeah. So let's be clear about that. I think what Nick is asking is, would it be okay to leave your answer like this? And the answer would be yes, strongly advised. If the only thing left to do is like trig, unit circle trig,
I
Yeah.
don't know.
or just easy arithmetic, stop. So obviously B I had to at least get here. I realized the arithmetic that follows would be hard to mess up, but I've seen people that said a negative times a negative was something other than a positive. It happens. So, and then of course for C, this would be where you could stop. You couldn't stop any earlier than that, but you could stop right there.
That one is just like step by step.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I messed up on a little algebra, but
Yeah. The real complicator was all the different functions, right? I mean,
yeah.
keeping all that stuff straight.
Frick, H of, alright, they didn't, that's annoying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, cause like H of 2 doesn't look like,
Say again?
well, H of 2,
Yeah.
on the graph it doesn't specify, so do you just take a guess? Like,
So H of 2,
like you could definitely say.
you can definitely figure it out because H is piecewise linear,
Oh, me.
right? So you come to the graph,
It's fine.
and H of 2 is obviously right here. And how do you get that? I think what I would do is I would count my slope off, right? And I would say, well, to go from here to there, I've got to go down 1, right 3. So it's a slope of -1/3. So I just do 2 of those, and I'd get -2/3 for that location. Okay.
I get that. I was wondering.
Does that make sense? Okay, so then we'll go back to the answers here. So you guys, do you have any questions on A, B, or C? I mean, Nick had a real good question about how do I use the graph to get this number. Other thoughts, questions?
I did like H of x and then equals -1/3 x plus c. Because I was like, oh, I can find like the position. But I was like, oh wait, it's on 0, so
For which one are we talking about?
yeah.
For A, B, or C? Oh, you're talking about the question that Nick had.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you ask that? I'm sorry.
No, he more or less did. He's like, how do you get this H of 2 thing,
Yeah.
right? I have seen people that did that, like for one of those piecewise graphs, like if maybe it was like F prime or something, they'd go for every single piece and try to find initial conditions and anti-differentiate and find all the different, it's so much easier just to like accumulate area or find the slope or whatever it is you're supposed to be doing. They're like trying to go backwards, which if you had an hour, I guess you could do it, but it's just going to take you longer than it should.
I did the slope was 1/3, so every like 1, it should go down 1/3. So
Yeah.
if it's 2, then it's -2.
Fantastic. Yeah, because then you move over 2 and you drop a third and then you drop a third, so you're at -2/3. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a great idea. Let me show you the answer for D real quick.
I have no idea the answer here.
Oh my gosh. I looked
Mean
at
value
it.
theorem.
Oh.
Mean value
Yes.
theorem.
I had to
That
put
was like
-3
what?
first. Ooh.
So notice that they wanted you to consider the average slope, but then your justification using the mean value theorem, you got to mention that since G is differentiable, G is continuous, therefore we have a guaranteed value for which G prime is -4 because of the MVT. You really don't have to say MVT. I think it's cool if you do. But if you just use the hypothesis of it and the conditions for it, then I think you've done what you needed to do.
Are there always 9 points?
They're always worth 9. I have no idea how they arrived at that. I'm thinking, why not just go all the way to 10? Makes sense, right? But they went with 9. Sometimes it's hard for them to figure out a way to allot all those 9 points. Guys, follow-up questions on D? Any of it, really. They refer to this as the alphabet question. I'm sure you can see why.
I like
10
alphabet
minus-
questions. I hate these.
You didn't like the alphabet question?
G.
You never know. You might see another one, so I thought I'd show you this one.
Yeah, I'll listen down.
You figure some stuff out?
Well, I did negative,
How?
G of negative 4 instead of G of negative 3. That's wrong.
So you just were like on the wrong row, the wrong column or something?
And then I would have gotten negative
Okay.
4.
Okay. So just a couple of reminders here before we go. You're doing well. I'm really encouraged. I think you're doing a really good job. So with today being Thursday, tomorrow's your quiz, so come ready to go. Come on in. Yeah, we'll get it going for real tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.